Chris, you want to start?
Sure. Can you just talk about how Blake played and the attitude he's bringing to that line?
Sure. Really proud of him and how he's come in and stepped up. And sometimes it's with all three of those guys. You forget they're redshirt freshmen sometimes, which is a good thing. It's a good thing, but sometimes as coach you have to remind yourself, all right, hey, oh shoot, he hasn't seen that before. He hasn't played 4 years of football where he's seen that look before, or knows how to adjust to that on the fly. But proud of him and how he went in and wasn't perfect obviously, but he's out there, he's fighting, and he's getting better every week.
In the back, Alejandro.
Grant, Sharon mentioned you a couple times as being instrumental in the run game against Michigan State. Is you working with Chip? Is that something that's a new development, or what's your role in that?
It's the same as it always is, right? It's just a team. It's we all have input, and Chip's the one who has to put it all together and package it together, and then obviously call the plays. So he does an incredible job of that, and he's also great about asking for a suggestion, or hey, what do you like here, and what are you seeing from how the line's blocking it. So no, it's just a complete team effort from all of us in the offensive staff.
In the front left, Anthony.
Obviously, it took injuries to get there, but now that you have three redshirt freshmen in the starting line, how exciting is that for you that they get these reps in November football, and then what it means for the future?
Sure. Obviously, you never want to have injuries, and probably wouldn't have gone into the season thinking this would be our fifth or whatever it is, starting combination in 8 games. It's obviously not what you hope for, but it's what you have to prepare for, and it's something that Coach Moore has always maintained, that you got to have 10 guys ready, and I think we've started 8 or 9 of them. So it shows the depth we have in our room, and it's a credit to those young guys like Blake, who even when he was not the starter, was still preparing as if he was, and was just kind of waiting for his opportunity, whether that came from injury or whether that came from beating someone out and earning a job. So it's a credit to those guys and the ownership they've taken.
In the front here, Ryan.
Back to the redshirt freshman offensive lineman. Why do you think it is tougher for offensive linemen to see the field early in their careers, and what do they have to do to be able to do that?
Sure. I think it's a couple of different things. One, the obvious one is physical. Physically, it's the closer you get to the ball, the stronger the guys get, the bigger the guys get, the more years of being in a college weight room shows up and takes effect. And any guy who's played as a young lineman can tell you that you go from high school, you were probably one of the strongest guys or the strongest guy that you were ever going to play, to now you're going against a 22, 23, even 24-year-old grown-ass man who's strong and is big and has played college football for a long time. So that's definitely the first thing that shows up. Obviously, everyone's more athletic, faster than kind of what you're used to in high school as well. But the thing I think that maybe less obvious is the mental piece of it, and how much mentally and there is playing offensive line, especially in a system like ours where we run a bunch of different schemes and you have to be prepared for different looks. And obviously now with defenses moving a bunch and pressuring a whole bunch of different ways, there's a lot of adjustments, a lot of whether that's pre-snap or post-snap reactions to what the look may be. And like I mentioned earlier with Blake, a lot of that is yes, we can coach it, but a lot of it you have to experience for the first time. Or shoot, oh hey, I remember I got that look a year ago, now I won't make that mistake again. Or now I've seen that happen in game, even if it's not something we prepared for this particular week. So proud of those guys and how they've attacked it and how they've gotten themselves ready to step in.
I know he doesn't play your position, but he is a major blocker, similar to Max Bredesen. What have you seen from Jalen Hoffman's transition to fullback, and how he's trying to emulate Max Bredesen?
Sure. It's a credit to the tight ends first and foremost, and the fullbacks, and how they've same thing we talked about the offensive line, how they've attacked their preparation. And I mean, those guys are tone setters on the team. I know Coach Casula does an excellent job with those guys, not just in the throw game, but also in the run game. And I would put those tight ends, fullbacks against any group in the country in terms of how they're prepared by Coach Casula, and then how they execute on game day and the physicality they bring. I mean, we watched a couple of times where Max Bredesen's putting a guy on his back 5 yards downfield in that game. And when you have that on your team, not just from the offensive line, but you have a group of tight ends and fullbacks who play like that and play with that violence and that physicality, I think it sets the tone for an offense.
Tony?
Yeah, just wondering if you could evaluate the run blocking versus the pass pro through 8 games. What do you like? Where do you think there's room for growth?
I think the biggest thing in both is just consistency. That's the thing that we challenge our guys with. You can't have the you're not going to win every single block. No lineman ever does, but it can't be the really, really good and then the really, really bad. And you look at the games that we have struggled as an offense and struggled as an offensive line, it's because there's been the home runs, but then the negative plays. Whereas if you can, have that general upward trajectory, you're gonna like where you are at the end of the game. And I think that was Michigan State. Outside of the issue with the snap and 2 or 3 plays, we didn't have the massive TFLs. We're just the unblocked guy in the hole.
On the left, Zach?
Other than maybe more patience, what sort of adjustments do you make as a coach when you do have 3 redshirt freshmen starting on the offensive line?
You got to make sure you're not doing too much. But again, I credit those guys. It hasn't had to be like we have had to go back to square one or, oh, hey, can this guy handle this? Those guys are all, they work their tails off. They're smart, and they've prepared for it. Obviously, Sprague got a little taste of playing last year, but Jake and Blake have prepared mentally, physically the whole offseason, as if they were going to be the guy the whole year. And it's a credit to them that we haven't had to dumb down the offense or really kind of guard against. Oh, hey, I don't know if we can do that this week because it's Blake, not Evan. So just big credit to those guys. Proud of those guys.
When guys, offensive line, obviously red shirts are very common. How do you, or what did you see from them last year that maybe impressed you about how they took that year?
Again, it's something that Coach Moore preaches on and harps on, is that there becomes that point where you're not a freshman anymore. Even if you're a redshirt or a guy who's redshirting, once you get through spring ball, you get through fall camp, you get a couple games in, even if you're not playing, even if you're still on the scout team, you sit in the same meetings as everyone else, you eat the same food, you get the same training environment, you get the same resources. So at a certain point, you got to take that step where it's not just, oh, I'm a freshman, or oh, he's a young guy. You got to have that initiative, and all 3 of those guys had that last year, and it's carried over, and happy to see it.
On the left, Clayton?
Sharon said that Brady's kind of taking more reps at tackle now as maybe the next guy. How big is having that versatility, and then also who are some of the other tackles that are kind of working? A lot of young guys, it seems like, in that.
Sure. So it's obviously it's never ideal scenario to have kind of what was your top 2 left tackles going into the year. Both be down right now, but or 2 or 3 with Blake still healthy. But that's part of the reason why we were so excited to get Brady in the portal, was because we knew he had that versatility, starting multiple years out at left tackle, even though he's we think more of a long term, and then NFL wise he's an interior guy. So yeah, he's been working back out there to just get him those reps again. But again, I have complete confidence in him, especially because he's done it for multiple years. And then like we said, it's starting to get these some of the other guys ready. Whether it's an older guy like Connor Jones or Ty Haywood, continue to progress him along and get him to the place where we can feel confident with him being in a game. So that's our job as coaches. It's my job as the offensive line coach, is to continue to get those guys ready so that God forbid we have to go farther down the line at tackle, then there won't be a drastic drop off.
On the left, Chris?
How would you evaluate the pass protection on Saturday, and do you think that played a part into the way you guys ran the ball more in the second half?
Obviously the biggest one that stood out was Blake got beat once on the third down, and Bryce was able to get out of it. But I think overall it was solid. Like I said, it's never going to be perfect, and I don't want to speak for anyone, but I don't think that running the football was oh, hey, we can't protect, nor was it oh, hey, Bryce can't do it. None of that. It was just that kind of game, and it feels like every year we have 1, 2, or 3 of those where it's it turns that kind of game where, hey, we're moving the ball on the ground, the defense is playing phenomenal, hey, that's what it's going to take to win. And the cool thing to complement, obviously our guys love running the football, but the rest of the offense, the tight ends, the receivers, Bryce, it became that kind of game. And Coach Lindsey kind of said, hey, this is we're still going to be able to throw the ball, but it's become that kind of game where the defense is playing really well, and we feel like we're moving them up front. And there was no like, what are we doing, or no complaining on the sideline. Everyone was like, whatever it takes to win, and it became that kind of game. But no, I still have complete confidence in our ability to protect the quarterback.
And then Blake, I think you said earlier in the year that he wasn't even back to full strength until after the season started. Did he miss some of camp in terms of not being as completely full strength?
Yeah, it was just he's battling through some different things, but just extremely proud of him and how he attacked that, and he's had obviously camp and now the season to kind of really roll, and it's showing up.
All the way in the back, Angelique.
Grant, I think you were a young starter, weren't you? You were.
Started my second year.
Yeah, I mean, can you use some of that experience? What was that experience like for you, and do you use that as you relate to these guys, coaching them?
Sure. It's an adjustment, as I experienced, as John standing back there can speak to. Starting early in this conference is difficult, and again, it's the good and the bad. Those guys are playing like older guys, so sometimes you have to remind yourself that it's just their for Frazier, it's just going to be his second game starting here this weekend. For Jake, he's still 3 or 4 whatever his games in. Even a guy like Sprague, because he started the bowl game last year. Sometimes I find myself like thinking of him like a vet or referring him as a vet, and he started 8 games in his career or 9 games, whatever it is now. So it's definitely an adjustment, and obviously you're playing in a premier conference with talented edge rushers. But to brag on our defense, the great thing for us is those guys have gotten reps last year, this year, against edges who are as talented or more talented than anyone will see this year. So that doesn't mean they'll be perfect, but when you get those reps in practice against the edges, comboing against really talented and strong defensive tackles, I think it prepares you for the game. You can never, practice can never perfectly imitate the game and the emotions and everything that goes into that, but having a great defense gives you the best shot.
I was curious, what does 77 mean to you?
So obviously it's an honor to wear that number, and there's a long history behind that, and it's a point of pride for sure. And I know Blake, it means a lot to Blake, and he understands the tradition and the history behind that number. Certainly not myself, but you go back and all the various guys who have worn that and have been immensely successful both here and in the NFL. It means a lot to him, just like truthfully playing offense line does. Period. When you see you got the O-line U display behind us, but you go back through the legends who have played here, John being one of them. We talk about it that every time you step on the practice field, every time you play a game, you're representing all of those guys. And if you're not finishing, if you're not playing physical, if you're not chasing the running back, it's not just a reflection on you, it's a reflection on all of those guys who have worn that jersey and played offensive line at the University of Michigan before you. So it's an incredible standard, both wearing 77, but also the offense line in general. And I think it's a good, our guys embrace that opportunity to live up to it.
Who's the best ever to wear 77?
Oh, I'm gonna cop out and respectfully say definitely not myself, because those are fighting words there. But it speaks to the talent, the immense, the talent we've had at the offensive line position, especially that's wearing that 77. That it's such a hard decision, but I mean, it's tough.
Did you wear it in high school?
Whoa. 3 questions. You're on a 5.
I didn't.
Austin, you now. Austin's up.
I did not. I wore 72 in high school.
Patrick, you want to ask a question?
Coach, there's a number of folks watching this. You keep mentioning John. Would you tell the viewers who you're talking?
Talking about John Jansen, sitting right here, who's our great, radio man, and obviously, a legend here in the offensive line. And it's cool, obviously, with him around the building. Jack Miller played center here around the building. For those guys to be able to see those guys every single day, and it's just a reminder of, the guys who have come before you and the guys who have set the standard that we're called to live up to.
Austin?
When you guys run RPOs, does anything change from a blocking standpoint? Anything different with the timing, or is the goal just to make it look exactly like a straight run?
Sure, it's always a fine line, because you want to make it look the exact same. Obviously there's some times where you live on that edge a little too much, and you get called for a man downfield. But that's kind of the I don't want to say the cost of doing business. So we have certain adjustments, and our guys are aware when it's an RPO, when it's not. But at the same time, the last thing we want to do, both myself, Coach Lindsey, Coach Moore, is take the aggressiveness out of them. So it's something we've done. We've done more of this year, and I think it's been great for our offense, because it prevents you from running the bad boxes.
We got time for a few more before we bring in Coach Lamar Moore. We're going to start with Aaron.
Grant, when it comes to run blocking versus pass blocking, do you find the young linemen are more adept at one over the other, or is it a case-by-case basis?
That's a great question. I think it depends guy to guy. A guy like Blake, who's incredibly athletic, has excellent feet. Naturally a bit more adept in pass protection than maybe like Link was, early in his career. Whereas Evan, a little bit bigger body guy, a little bit thicker lower half. That came a little bit easier to him early in his career. So I think I don't want to make a generalization and say one versus the other. I think it just depends guy to guy, and shoot, it's our job as coaches, my job as the offensive line coach to make sure we push them in both those areas.
Ryan?
You've talked about how challenging it can be mentally for young linemen. I guess, how are you able to work with that with Andrew Babalola, even though he's out for the year?
Sure. So I mean, the great thing, one, he's just incredibly smart. I mean, he may be the smartest player we have in the building. That's not an insult to anyone else we have on the team. We have a bunch of smart guys, but he's incredibly smart. But it's also a credit to him for how he stayed engaged mentally. It's very easy, especially when you're a freshman and you're pushing to play, and all of a sudden you have a season-end injury, to kind of go in the tank and become disinterested. And he's been the exact opposite. He's attacking rehab. He's going to class still. Which it's sometimes even tough to do when you're injured. But he's making that effort, and then he's in our meetings. He's asking questions. He's staying engaged. He's coming up and watching extra film. So it's a credit to him that he's had the right mindset, you want to say, but sometimes the hard mindset, especially when you're an 18-year-old kid and you go through kind of the highest of highs, and you are on the track to play early in your career, to feeling like the lowest of lows, where all of a sudden that's been taken away from you temporarily.
How much of a push was he making in camp to be able to start or play?
He was playing really well. And we were very confident with where Evan was, where he was, where Blake was. So I'm excited for him to continue to work and get back to where he was, and be able to push to play next year.
Last question, Alejandro.
Jake mentioned that he'd been repping mostly at center until summer and fall camp. Do you expect him to be the center of the future? Does his performance at guard change the equation at all?
Sure, it's something you think about, not just week to week, but in the big picture, in the offseason. And it all comes down to how can we get our best five in the field. So whether that's him at center, whether that's him at guard, it's something that we'll look up after the season. Something we're still working him at, obviously. God forbid something happen to Crippen, where he still has that ability to go play center if that's how we feel like we get to our best five. If something happens to 51. So it's always a balance. You don't want to overload guys, but again, it's a credit to Jake that as a redshirt freshman, and we feel like he can handle both all the responsibilities and the protection calls and the IDs that come with being center, while also being able to handle the guard. And the great thing about being center is you're, especially in our offense, you're the quarterback of the offensive line. You set the protections, you make the run IDs. You got to know the game plan as well or better than any other offensive lineman. So I think that makes it easier playing guard, because you already know all the calls, the responsibilities, versus taking maybe a tackle who, even though he still knows it, he's not as familiar with being on the inside, and all of a sudden now him having to play center.
Can I ask how Andrew's rehab is going, and when you expect him back, maybe?
Sure. I'm not a doctor. I can't touch on the specifics, but just I'll say the intensity I see him attacking it with, and his mindset, and shoot, it feels like every time I walk by the training room, if he's not in class, he's down there getting work, and he's attacking it. And again, just immensely proud of him, because I can speak for myself. When I got hurt as a sophomore, my mindset was not always that, and it's very easy to kind of go in the tank and have a pity party for yourself and not feel like shoot, it's it's such a long process. And the thing I encouraged him is don't fall in that trap. Just set small goals for yourself, and hey, how am I going to win today in rehab? And he's done that, and immensely proud of him and excited for him to get back.